Sure. Okay. Whoa, wow. There we go. I'm going to have this back. Okay. So I specifically did not regulate myself before I got up here to speak because I'm talking about regulation and attachment. And as a behaviorist, I know that often it's a model that really, really helps. So I'm going to regulate myself real quick because I have a captive audience and you guys have to do this. You have to watch me. And I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing. So the first thing I do when I'm regulating myself is I'm consciously slowing my breathing way down. I would love if you do this with me. Even if you're already super regulated, you can get more regulated, I promise. As I'm slowing my breathing down, I'm also letting tension go from my body. The places you always want to check are your eyes. Someone earlier said soft eyes, Dr. Chantel, I think. Soft eyes, you want to make sure your eyes are soft. You want to make sure your jaw is soft. And really let yourself go sort of loose, release that tension. Then the last thing I'm doing is in my mind, I'm walking myself through, I'm talking myself through this event. I'm saying, Derek, you've done this before. I literally have spoke at this event before, so I know I can do this. So that's the first thing is I go looking for evidence. You know you can do this. And then I always check myself on what's the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? What if my clothes just evaporated and I was standing here naked? It wouldn't really actually be the worst thing in the world. It would be okay. That's the sort of stuff they scrub from the internet. You guys would all just laugh. I'd run out of here embarrassed and try to cover myself. And in a few years, I would be recovered, right? I probably wouldn't even think about it. So that's, in a nutshell, a regulatory process. Taking just a moment to sweep yourself with your attention, like those sci-fi beams where they're scanning you to see if you have anything. Use your attention to scan yourself. What's going on? Release the tension, slow down the breathing, see where your thought's at, start checking yourself, and then get yourself ready to go. Let's see if I can figure out the clicker. All right, so a bit about me as a person. I am neurodivergent. I don't know if you could tell. That's my own little humor for me. Historically, connection was really, really tough for me. I didn't know how to connect. I didn't know who to connect with. I connected erratically, right? I would connect with some people and not connect with other people. So it's a thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and figuring out how to manage it. In that realm, I became a behaviorist, a psychologist, and I really focus a lot on interpersonal neurobiology. What that means is it's a focus on how our bodies and brains change as they are in a relationship with other bodies and brains. That fascinated me. I want to also talk just a little bit about connection. And you can read that down there, which I'm not really going to talk about. I actually want to tell you about something that you know a lot about, which is electricity. If you have a power cord, it's wrapped in something, right? Like rubber or neoprene or whatever. The reason it's wrapped in something is because that boundary allows the electricity to move in a direction that you want it to move in. If I don't wrap a cord in something, if I don't have a boundary around that cord, the electricity just arcs out wildly. It might power something, but it might burn something. It might torch something. It's unpredictable. The boundaries around that energy is what allows those connections to power things, and to make things better. So meaningful connection is actually one of our needs. I don't know if you knew that. Along with water and food and a stable temperature and all those things, we need connection, which you may hear me call engagement. I know a technology that uses the word engagement instead of connection, so I might slip back and forth between the two. Just be aware of that. One of the things about a meaningful connection is that we have to be able to communicate effectively. We also need to be able to tolerate a little vulnerability. I just talked a bit about electrical connections. Has anyone here ever gone to plug in something into an electrical socket and you were holding a bit too close to the metal prongs and you zap yourself? It's vulnerable to connect. It's always a little bit of vulnerability in those connections, and you need to be able to communicate about that and have boundaries around that vulnerability. So I want to make a quick note here. I'm a behaviorist. Behavior is communicative, all of it. If I'm engaging in any behavior, I am communicating something to the world. What that means is I need to be real thoughtful about what I'm saying, because what I think I'm communicating with my behavior may not be what you all hear. And I need to be thinking about that as I am looking for that meaningful connection, which is also part of boundaries, right? Being honest with ourselves and setting up our own self-management and self-care is part of our boundaries. It's part of what helps us connect meaningfully. Restating a point, if all behavior is communication, what are we saying? The way we respond, and I want to point out here, it's not what we say. We as humans intrinsically know to not really trust what people say, right? It's kind of programmed inside of us. We pay more attention to how people treat us. So the way we respond with our behavior in a situation, it's going to determine how other people understand how they can relate with us. This is my example. I'm with a friend, and we have an argument, and they start yelling. And when I say yelling, I don't mean like their voice is up a little bit because they're feeling heated. I mean like they're screaming at me. And I say, hey, whoa, you cannot scream at me. And then my friend keeps screaming at me. If I do anything other than say, hey, I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself, and go, I am communicating with my behavior that it actually is okay to scream at me. I was lying earlier when I said don't scream at me. It's all right, go ahead and keep screaming at me. And what that means is that person is most likely to keep screaming at me. But if I do what I said, my opinion there, and I say, I can't talk when I'm feeling like this, and I leave, my friend is left there not being able to yell at me because I'm gone. They can yell at the wall. They can throw a pillow around. They can be angry. They can send me angry voice notes on WhatsApp. They can do all of that, but I'm not there, and they can't yell at me anymore. And if I don't answer the WhatsApp messages, I don't even acknowledge that they were ever sent, the most likely thing to happen, it's not always true, but the most likely thing to happen is that friend, if they really want to be my friend, will yell at me less. Because them yelling at me removes access to me. And they want access to me because connection is a need. This is an easy example, or this is easy in an example, right? I can make up the exact example, I can set the exact parameters, but when the rubber hits the road, there's nothing that I hear more from a client than that setting boundaries is really hard. And I think it bears repeating. Setting boundaries is really, really hard to do. And the reason it's hard to do is because intrinsically we as people have a vested interest in other people not having boundaries. If none of you have boundaries, I can get whatever I want from any of you. I can exploit you, I can manipulate you, I can push you into places that you don't feel good about. I don't want you to have boundaries. So if you set a boundary with me, I'll behave poorly. I'll go, oh no, I'll throw a fit. Because I don't want you to have a boundary. That makes me upset. I want to be able to access whatever I want from you whenever I want it, because that's about my needs, because I'm insecure. Because I am in this world that I look around and I see there's a lot of danger, and there's a lot of people not getting needs met. So I'm going to prioritize myself, because I have to. I can't live your life. I have to live my life. So setting boundaries is about keeping yourself safe in connection. And it's about recognizing that another person reacting poorly to you setting a boundary isn't necessarily an indication that that boundary was bad. It's actually an indication that that person doesn't like that boundary. They have a real problem with that boundary being set. So what you do in those instances is you instead just look at your own boundary and you make your determination based on your best judgment about the world to see, was that actually an appropriate boundary? Or did I make a mistake here? And if in that moment you go, oh, I made a mistake, then you go and you correct it, right? That's that guilt thing. You say, oh, that was an incorrect behavior. It's not in alignment with my values. You go correct it. If instead you look at the boundary and go, no, that was fine, then that's okay. That other person just gets to be however they feel about it, and you hold the boundary. I don't say this because I want you to believe that no one will respect your boundaries. I know that to not be the case. There will be people in your life that will respect your boundaries, and that's a good sign that you should keep connecting with those people. You want to get them into your life. But you do just need to always remember that that default doesn't mean anything about you. Somebody reacting poorly to you setting a boundary doesn't mean anything about you. Be looking for that shame voice, because it's really easy to creep in the boundary realm. All right, so setting boundaries. This is a story I use a lot, and I find it to be effective because And anyone who knows me may have heard me say this. Everything is like everything else. I find that analogies are real helpful in understanding stuff. So say you have a piece of property down by the beach, and it's real lovely. Maybe it's even got a little iron shore to kind of protect that shoreline, and you can kind of build up on the back. But you haven't been developing it because you've been living your life, right? You've been in the scramble, you've been in the rush, you have all these things. And in the meantime, locally, people have started using this little bit of beach because it's lovely. It's got a little iron shore to sit on. It's a nice place. But you want to develop this property now. If you go up into that beachfront and you start yelling, and I'm going to call the cops, and the most likely thing to happen is people are really going to have a problem with you building on that beach. You're going to have people out there protesting you. You're going to have people filing injunctions maybe. You're going to have all sorts of things coming up the works. But if you instead go down there one day with a picnic lunch and sit by the people down on that beach and say, yeah, this really is beautiful, isn't it? You know, I actually own this property, and I'm happy for you guys to be down here over the next little while, but I'm going to be starting to build. And so eventually, this upper area up here, it won't be available. It'll be part of my property. Down here on the beach will be fine. I just ask that you keep it clean. And if every day I go there and I keep saying that to everybody that's there, and then slowly I start building and my property starts coming up, it's more likely that people are going to be okay with it. They might even go, oh, hey, that's the cool guy who has that property. He lets us go and hang down at his beach. This story helps us see a good model for setting your boundary. We often hear things. Behaviorism taught me this. You realize you need to do a thing, and then you go, oh, okay, I'm going to do it 127%, and you go all in, and then you run out of energy, and you feel discouraged, and you give up. Boundaries are so often that. Someone goes, oh, I see I need to put in this boundary. I'm going to go and talk to my mom right now, and I'm going to tell her she can't talk to me like that. With no practice in setting boundaries, and then they burn out. They can't do it. Their mom responded poorly. We got into a big fight, and then I told her that I didn't mean it. It's because you set too much too soon. The way you set a boundary is slowly. You start practicing. Maybe his mom's screaming at me. I can just sort of walk slowly off screen a little bit. And I can kind of tune out a little bit, and I can fake like I'm listening. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Maybe I need to take a call suddenly, and I can go. Maybe I can learn that we always get into a fight at night, so maybe I just won't be at home at night. And then mom can't fight with me, and I can come in at a different time while I start practicing setting that boundary until I get good enough at it that I can go to mom and say, hey, you know, you can't really talk to me like this anymore. I don't care that you're my mom. It's not acceptable. Yeah. Okay. But really, with boundaries, and this is another thing I tell my clients a lot, is it's sort of I don't like language because it's so imperfect. I hate the phrase setting a boundary because that makes it seem like a one and done. I sometimes use the phrase drawing a boundary, and you continually draw a boundary. You do it over and 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 over. You don't get to just set a boundary and have people respect that. You have to do this over and over and over. You have to get good, you have to practice. And you have to practice setting it the right way. If I'm in an argument and my friend starts yelling at me, I go, don't you yell at me! It's pretty likely that my friend's gonna yell back at me, right? Because I just yelled at them. I set the precedent. I said, it's okay for you to yell at me. But if I get good at going, I'm gonna go unless you can, get it under control and stop yelling at me in a bit. We can talk later, but I can't be here. And then I go, I'm much more likely to have someone hear that boundary because I'm not getting aggressive. I'm not adding to the energy. I'm instead just stating my boundary really calmly, letting somebody know the consequence and following through on it. I think it's really important to remember that we don't actually set boundaries for other people because, like I said before, like it's a grab bag as to whether someone's going to respect your boundary or not. You really set your boundaries so that you have a reason and you have evidence to show you that it's okay to let that person be responsible for their behavior. When I advocate my boundary with my friend for yelling at me, and then my friend keeps yelling at me and I go, you know what, I'm going. And I walk off and I get downstairs and I just leave, right? I go away. I, in my mind, just showed myself that it was okay that I walked away because they kept yelling at me. And I said something about it. I told them not to yell at me, and then they kept yelling at me. It's hard evidence that I'm justified in walking away here. And the more you set and you advocate those boundaries for yourself, the easier it gets to remind yourself that, oh yeah, this is for me. This is so I can keep myself safe. The cool fringe benefit of setting boundaries is it runs a real risk of drawing people to you that have similar tastes and boundaries. And then you start getting people around you that really respect your boundaries. That's sort of a cool thing that happens. It takes a little while, but as you get really, really good at setting your own boundaries, you start attracting that kind of energy from other people because they recognize they're compatible. They go, oh, that person's got great boundaries. I've got great boundaries. We can hang out. We can do something. One of the things that I think is really important also with understanding boundaries is this thing I have down here at the end, which I've been known to say sometimes. This is how I understand personal responsibility, right? You get the version of me that you get because of the version of you that you are. And I get the version of you that I get because of the version of me that I are. Sorry, it really should be am, but I just want it to be are because of the symmetry. What that means is you're going to respond to me based on how I act. If I come in and I'm relaxed and I'm easygoing and I've got a soft face and I'm willing to let you talk and I'm willing to have you have space and I'll support you, I know that success is for everyone, gosh, I'm going to get the best version out of you. But if I come in and I'm insecure and oh gosh, he's got better hair than me and I don't know what to do about this, I'm going to get a really weird, tense version of you. And that's my responsibility, just like you are your responsibility. As I can remember this, it helps me detach from those moments where I feel like, oh, I set that boundary, was that wrong? I can remember, no, them yelling at me is their problem. What was I doing? That's my problem. Did I do something that got that yelling on? Oh yeah, actually I did. I got a little sassy and that was my thing. I shouldn't have gotten sassy. Okay, that's my thing to correct. It puts the onus in the right place and helps you keep yourself on the right track. All right, self-regulation. Self-regulation is really just the ability of your organism, your body, to return to a baseline state. I don't really actually love that definition. It's one that's really commonly used. I don't like it because I've worked with a lot of trauma patients. I've worked with a lot of anxiety issues, and their baseline is not, it's not homeostasis, right? Their baseline is way high, and it's way agitated. But self-regulation is that ability for you to bring yourself from an emotional state, a heightened place, whatever it may be, and to bring it back down to a spot where you're relaxed and more neutral. Around 60% of us, these numbers are derived from attachment, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But roughly 60% of us get set up with good enough self-regulation skills. We have parents that are good enough. We're securely attached. They weren't perfect, but we get that we're our own people and we can be successful, and if we do the right things, that we'll open avenues, and we go out into the world and we do okay. The other 40% are left with sort of this uneven grab bag. You'll find a lot of really adaptive things in this population. This 40%, they have a lot of really cool coping skills that they've learned because they were left to their own devices. And they invented all of these really neat ways to regulate. But they've got these few instabilities that make it really, really difficult to get back to that homeostatic place where you're really, really regulated. They call these two secure and insecure attachments. It's just broad categories. We can talk more later if you find me about this, because it's a lot of stuff in attachment. I think of developing your personal regulation skills as developing a really good relationship with yourself. We often call this inner child work. Your parents didn't raise you right. I know, what a brazen thing for me to say. I'm really reasonably sure I'm right, though, too. And the reason I'm sure I'm right is because your parents weren't you. They don't know how to provide for you. They don't know how to make sure that this worked. They were them, and they figured out rules and things that worked really well for them, and that's all well and good. Some of that will work for you because there's genetic overlap. You are your parents' children for the most part. But some of those things won't work. Some of the stuff my dad taught me about the world, it's not working. It doesn't work for me. I'm not that person. I had to find my own new ways. So this means that when we're doing our inner child work, we're kind of taking back over that parenting and we're redoing it and we're doing it the right way because we know ourselves better than anyone could possibly know us. And we're taking that burden on of saying, okay, I'm going to make sure I know just what I need and when I need it, and then I'm going to put in the work to make sure that I get that for myself whenever I need it. This takes some awareness, and awareness of self is a little bit of a double-edged sword, mostly because as we become aware of something, it can grow. If I'm ignoring my sadness or I'm ignoring my pain or I'm ignoring that, it can get a little dim. It actually grows in the background and we have blowouts every once in a while. But in the meantime, it's sort of dim in the background. If I focus on it, it comes into my awareness more and then it's sort of scary. But nonetheless, that self-awareness just means that we're getting tuned into our radio station. We're aware of the way we react to the things in the world. Everything that happens in self-awareness is going to be really important for your growth and healing. It's going to be really important for your wellness. Mindfulness is the way that I know to develop self-awareness. And the way I think of mindfulness, we've talked about it a little bit today, is really just becoming a very good observer of yourself. Making sure that you know what's happening without any judgment. Oh, I just noticed I feel really nervous. Oh, I just noticed I feel really angry. Oh, I just noticed that made me feel scared. Oh, I just noticed I'm feeling shame. Taking all of the other stuff, this is bad, I can't handle this, I can't go through this again, this must not happen to me, I can't see him one more time. Those are all judgments that will just start a fight with yourself. Instead, focusing on the observation. Oh, as I thought about him, my heart rate increased. I notice my jaw's really tense as I'm thinking about it. Oh, taking that minute to check in with yourself for everything that means. Curiosity is really at the center of this for me. I don't think of mindfulness as traditional like meditation where I'm trying to empty my mind and reach nirvana. Sometimes I do that sort of meditation. It's nice, but it's not really mindfulness. Mindful practice is really just sitting with yourself. Maybe your mind is going a mile a minute. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're having trouble even hearing your own thoughts. Mindfulness just means you notice that to yourself. You recognize, wow, I'm really having trouble even picking up what's going on with me in this moment. I feel really lost and confused. Good job, you're doing mindfulness. It really just means you're a sportscaster for that particular moment in your life. I already spoke about removing the judgments, and we've talked earlier about self-compassion. Super important here. If there's something that you're observing that if you projected onto another person, you would have compassion for that person, it's your job to start practicing having that compassion for yourself. If I'm sitting here and I've been through all of these things and I go, oh, you know, if my wife had been through all these things, how would I feel about that? Oh, I'd feel awful. I'd feel so bad for her. Well, then maybe it would be okay to feel bad for me too. Maybe it would be okay to extend that grief to myself and let myself know that that's okay. This is mostly what I just said, so go ahead and look at that. I'm going to skip ahead in the sake of time. Okay, the role of emotions. Why do we have them? What purpose do they serve? When I was young, I wanted to become a disembodied intelligence that just floated through the universe and had no emotions and could just pick up all the learning in the world and didn't have to deal with all that humanness. I really liked Spock and Data from Star Trek. Right? That was like my model for how I wanted to be. But it's not really the benefit that we would think it would be. There are individuals that are disconnected from their emotions. Interestingly enough, observationally and using instruments to detect what we think of as emotions shows that these people do have emotions. They just really struggle connecting with them. And it's a condition called anhedonia. These individuals, they'll be clenching their fists and have an angry face, talking about the abuse they suffered, and you'll say, how are you feeling? They'll say, I feel fine. But you can see white knuckle tight, and they're just grimacing. Often these individuals have heart problems. They often have serious stress conditions. There's a lot of dysregulation happening, and it's because they're not connected. They're not hearing what their emotions are trying to tell them, so they can't adjust appropriately. Our emotions are there to communicate to our own bodies. Something's happening that you need to do something about. If I'm sad, it means I'm in an environment that's draining me. It's bringing me down, and that feeling of sad is motivating me to go, to get out, to do something different, to hide, to escape this, because this is bad. If I'm happy, it's my body saying, sit right there. Just enjoy this. Soak it in. This is nice. That's what happiness does. Anger is something's wrong, and I need to overcome this. I need to fix this. We get lost in the intensity of these emotions, and we forget that it's really our machine, our meat machine, trying to help keep us on the right track. It's giving us clues. It's saying, hey, this is how you feel. Maybe you could do something about it. So these are not my only examples, but just to re-sum them, if you're angry, most likely thing is something's blocking you from a goal. So start looking at your goals. Start looking at where you want to be in your life. Maybe you need to just formalize them. If you're sad, you're probably not getting enough of something you need. Start thinking about your needs. Food, sleeping, touch, nurture, care, structure in my day, challenge, growth. If you're happy, it doesn't teach us much. All it really tells you is that felt nice. Learning to recognize the specific patterns of your emotions can really give you a lot of insight into how to take control of your life. So I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I was working and I was really stressed, and every day before work and every day at lunch, I would break down and cry. And I really couldn't figure it out. I didn't know why, but I was a behaviorist, so I just started charting the data. And the data showed me it was always happening at the same times, and I don't know why I didn't realize this, but it always happened right before work, and then during lunch when I was about to go back to work. Oh, duh, I hate this job. Right? Okay, I need to get a different job. Like, done. I had been in this cycle where I was wondering to myself, why am I crying on the way to work every day for months? For months. When the answer was right there in front of me. You're crying right before you go to work, dummy. Do something about it. You're not getting what you need there. That's a different example from my life, but, I just gave you one, so deal with it. Emotions in relationships are maybe the most confusing thing that humans ever deal with. One person is plenty of variables. Being a behaviorist and charting data, trust me, one person is plenty of variables to try to keep track of. The problem with relationships is that the second I bring another person into my variable set, it's multiplicative. It's not additive. We've now like quadratically increased the amount of variables that we have. What if I'm sad while you're angry? What if I'm happy while you're sad? What if I'm really giddy to get going while you're ready to withdraw? We've got all these extra problems that'll start cropping up when we get into a relationship. And if we don't know how to regulate and set our boundaries, we'll find ourselves in really dark waters. So here's my example. If I feel really great about my significant other when I'm with them, and I feel really terrible about that relationship when I'm away from them, this means that something is going on. I don't know exactly what, but it means you need to look more closely at that. What's happening when I'm with them? Are they love bombing me? Am I showing up and it's this and this and this and this and this and this, and then when I'm away, it's nothing? I'm ghosted. I'm left completely dangling, and I don't know how long it'll be. Oh, okay, maybe this isn't a good relationship for me. It's important to be honest with yourself about what's really going on with you when you're experiencing these emotions. Trying to lie to yourself, and by the way, like I shouldn't feel angry, that's a lie. You'll break that right away the first time you feel angry, right? So learning how to be honest with yourself about your emotions and what's going on is going to be extra important when you're doing it in a relationship with another human being. This is a quick slide that I can sum up really fast. Connection and vulnerability, really honestly, just success in life and mental wellness doesn't require that you not be scared. It just requires that you be brave. You got to be brave enough to move. You don't have to move rashly, and you don't have to move right off the edge of a cliff in a rush, but you've got to move. My time's up, so let me sum up attachment real quick. Your attachment's going to set up your default operating system in your connections. What that means is if your parents treated you a certain way, and that certain way was kind of crummy, you're going to recognize that as love, despite that actually not being love. So you need to be real thoughtful about who you are getting into relationships with if you know that you have some of these patterns. If you've been in more than 2 relationships where you've been exploited, that's a pattern. And it's time to start thinking about what that is. What am I reading as love? What am I reading as connection that actually isn't? It's actually exploitation. All right, so finally what I want to do is just take a minute and express to you that connection can be done very simply. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to connect with everyone in the room. It won't take very long. This is going to be a little vulnerable, so if you don't want to connect with me, just don't look at me. All right, here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to connect with everybody in the room. Yeah, I see you. I wasn't just whistling Dixie. I'm really going to do this with every single one of you. Unless you don't look at me. You guys have such nice smiles. It's true. I'm seeing so many beautiful faces out here. What a nice moment. Thanks for doing this with me. Yeah. Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi. Good to see you. Yeah. Beautiful. That's as easy as it is. Just taking the moment and being a little brave. Thank you so much for your time. I'd like to thank the Alex Panton Foundation. Have a great day.
Yeah, have a seat.